Guys, today we're talking about Pokemon Ranger, one of Nintendo's most underrated spin-off series. Even after Jaded Animations since made the video of Pokemon Ranger, I still consider the entire series underrated. Nintendo just basically dropped the series, even though the series had a lot of potential to be on par with something like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Which I don't know if I think Nintendo's still gonna make another Mystery Dungeon game, as well as remaking Pokemon, Explorers of Sky, Darkness, and Time. Wouldn't be too surprising if that also happens as well. Considering the Switch is the right end of its life cycle, maybe they want to put it on Nintendo's next console to show off the power with that game. But Pokemon Ranger as a series has basically just disappeared. And it's it's one of Pokemon's more unique things. Okay, it's one of Pokemon spin-offs have basically died. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, one of the biggest spin-offs, even then, the Switch has seen only one Mystery Dungeon game, and that is a remake of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. There was even talks that Mystery Dungeon might be dead as a series for good, considering the fact that the 3DS had two Mystery Dungeon games, the DS had two Mystery Dungeon games, and the Game Boy Advance had one, which was also in conjunction with the DS one as well. The Switch has only had one Mystery Dungeon game, and that's a remake of an old Mystery Dungeon game. Again, I don't know why Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is also suffering the spin-off syndrome. Pokemon spin-offs have disappeared, and it's sad too that Pokemon spin-offs have basically been relegated to mobile consoles as well. I also think that a 2.5D Pokemon Ranger could definitely work as well. I don't think a fully 3D Pokemon Ranger would work. It'll be too ambitious and too difficult for Nintendo to do. But again, 2.5D could definitely work. Zelda's Link Awakening and the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon remake make out 2.5D games that worked pretty well on the Switch. I think there is no excuse Nintendo could definitely not use a 2.5D art style for this. I also think there was a missed opportunity to put a game on the Wii, considering how heavily Nintendo promoted Pokemon Ranger as an IP back in the day, with Pokemon anime, promoting the series. The Pokemon anime movie of Manaphy, literally had a cross promotion with the entire series as well, with one of the things being the Manaphy egg you can get from the first Pokemon Ranger as well. And I remember playing these games all the time when I was a kid. I remember playing the first game. Even though the first game was my brother's game, he doesn't really like it, so he said, okay, you know what, this game is yours now. I got the second game around before my birthday, and it was like, oh my god, it was a much better version of the first game. I still like the first game, but the second game was so amazing. I played the game endlessly for hours. I beat the game so many times as well. I liked the story, the characters, and everything about the game. It definitely was one of the better stories in Pokemon history, on par with the Mystery Dungeon series. And when everybody talks about story in Pokemon games, everybody talks about the Mystery Dungeon series. But of course, because nobody talks about Pokemon Ranger, of course the stories for the Pokemon Ranger games are kind of ignored as well. I'm not going to spoil any of the game's stories, obviously, so yeah. And also, I had played the game so long ago that I don't remember the stories anyways. But yeah, I bet if I played the games again, I'll remember the stories. But I don't want to spoil them anyways as well. But yeah, I think a fourth game or a remake of the first or second game should definitely as well. And also, they made a third game. I also remember getting the third game for on like Christmas or something. I don't remember how I got the third game, but I remember I had the third game and then I just lost it, and then I was sad that I lost the third game. And then I got the game online from Amazon for like $30. And yeah, I think that I got the third game around like 2017 and 2016 when they were still selling DS games with the 3DS as well. And you can still get the game pretty easily. I think all three games are pretty hard to come by now, especially the second game, considering that Zayn Animations played the game, so it's going to be a very well game. I still have all three of the Pokemon Ranger games for the DS. I don't have the box for the games, because I used to throw out the game boxes as well. But yeah, I think Nintendo should definitely bring back Pokemon Ranger as an IP as well. And considering the fact that, it's another underrated, IP of Pokemon, I think that it should be definitely given another chance as well. Considering that Nintendo has so many long dormant IPs and spin-offs, it's not too surprising that Pokemon Ranger has disappeared as well. But again, nobody talks about Pokemon Ranger. Like, everybody still forgets the games exist. Like, when it comes to Pokemon spin-offs, people talk about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon and nothing else. And Pokemon Snap, if you grew up in the 90s, of course. Pokemon Snap, of course, everybody's going to talk about that because, remember back in the day that, Pokemon Snap was so great. Or remember Pokemon Stadium as well. They always talk about those two when it comes to 90s kids. But outside of those two, which is mostly talked about by 90s kids and the nostalgia of the 90s, outside of that, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is the only real talked about spin-off series. And there's a very good reason why Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is talked about a lot. Okay? But not many people really talk about Pokemon Ranger. Not any of the big PokeTubers really mention Pokemon Ranger all too much as well. Again, they mostly talk about the main series Pokemon games. They don't always delve into spin-offs. But even they still talk about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon every once in a while. But Pokemon Ranger, you hear crickets from all these big PokeTubers about Pokemon Ranger. Like, there's no big push to bring back this series. I think I was really hoping that Nintendo would release a Pokemon Ranger game for the 3DS. With Gen 5 Pokemon as well, considering I love a lot of Gen 5 Pokemon as well. Well, or even, hey, wait until Pokemon X and Y come out and add Pokemon from that game as well. You can, you can have like a partner Pokemon, like, and you can, again, Nintendo would have another excuse to put Greninja as the new favorite Pokemon as well. But I think, hopefully, one day Nintendo might consider bringing back Pokemon Ranger. There have been articles talking about how it's time for Nintendo to bring back Pokemon Ranger. At least the media is starting to acknowledge, hey, and hopefully maybe people who have nostalgia for the DS and of the games at that time, for example, Jay Animations, more people talk about Pokemon Ranger who have played the games. Considering the game sold millions of copies, it is kind of sad that nobody talks about this series of Pokemon games. I have all 3 of the games on the DS still. I still have all 3 of the game cartridges, and I would definitely love to see a full Pokemon Ranger game. It is kind of weird that the 90s kids got what they want, which is Pokemon Snap coming back, but, us 2000 kids, we don't get anything. We don't get a new Mystery Dungeon game, even though the last 2 Mystery Dungeon games, in my opinion, are lackluster, still compared to the first 2, okay? And, really kind of regressed as well. And I'm not talking about making the games 2.5D games or 3D games. I'm just talking about, like, the gameplay is not as, good as it used to be. They're still kind of the same, but they kind of, like, change everything. They add all these weird mechanics in Gates of Infinity that I just didn't like. And then they add more weird mechanics in Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon. The game sort of stayed simple and easy to understand. I think they should go back to the drawing board or do it like Super Mystery Dungeon, where you don't have all these overly complicated mechanics from Gates to Infinity and Super Mystery Dungeon in the game as well. And of course, keep, if they really want to keep these sound effects from the Gates to Infinity, I guess that's fine, okay, as well. But I think they should definitely bring back stuff like recruiting Pokemon stuff. For some reason, they cut that in Super Mystery Dungeon. Don't know why, okay, as well. You can't even nickname Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon, which makes it even worse. The plot, the new Mystery Dungeon games got childish, even with, going to school. Like, why? Okay. And Super Mystery Dungeon remains the only Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game I have never completed because I just did not like Super Mystery Dungeon at all. I did not like that game at all. It was definitely my least favorite Mystery Dungeon game by far. Even Gates to Infinity at least was even though the story was kind of bland, it still was a Mystery Dungeon game. It still kept some things intact from the previous games as well. And also I like the fact that you could create your own little Pokemon villains as well. Okay, but Pokemon Ranger, I'm glad that they didn't make a 4th game and completely ruined it as well. But I think Nintendo should definitely do a remaster or a remake of all 3 games in one, with a 2.5D art style similar to Link's Awakening, and of course Super Mystery Dungeon. Have a new art style for the game, make the games look beautiful on the Switch or Switch 2. definitely do something like that. Even like a remake of the first Pokemon Ranger game would be pretty cool and interesting. You could add in, mechanics from the second or third game, like, partner Pokemon stuff. Oh wait, that would be going too far. But add in like the health bows, and stuff. Add in the stuff that made the games better, but keep the games like the first game. Okay, keep the feel of the first game, the story, the plot, and everything that made the first game so great as well. And yes, Pokemon Ranger is more than just a tech demo. It is a game with a story and characters that Nintendo has forgotten about. Very similar to Mystery Dungeon as well, which is another thing that Nintendo has forgotten about, especially Spike Chunsoft. But don't worry, don't worry, they're working on another Chocobo Mystery Dungeon, but completely ignore Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, which is ironic because Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is easily the best-selling Mystery Dungeon series to date, outselling every other Mystery Dungeon series as well. Okay, I was thinking an idea for like a Pokemon for Mario Mystery Dungeon would also be pretty cool. You can use Mario power-ups throughout the game. You can fight Bowser's minions at the very end, Mario and Luigi and other Mario characters. It would be very similar to Puzzle and Dragons Mario as well. Well, also in the Mario one, you can recruit Bowser's enemies can like rebel against you and join your team as well, and you and Luigi and other Mario characters will all unite to beat Bowser at the very end. That's actually a pretty cool idea for a game. But I think definitely Nintendo should bring back Pokemon Ranger. I think, there is so much potential for a fourth game. Using motion controls for a fourth game. Using, using your Joy-Cons as a literal styler as well. Also packaging the game with a stylus for the, handheld mode as well. Considering that something like Mario Maker 2 is able to work on the Switch, I think something like Pokemon Ranger could work on the Switch as well. Or the Switch 2. If the Switch 2 is very similar to the Switch as well. I think Pokemon Ranger would have worked very well on the Wii U. Okay? Considering the fact they had a little gamepad, where you can, use that really came with a stylus type thing. Okay, and definitely the 3DS as well, making the games 2.5D very similar to, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon as well. And also you can still keep the 2D aspect of the, capture the Pokemon, but it can be like a 2.5D art style very similar to Mystery Dungeon got as well. I think Nintendo should definitely bring back Pokemon spin-offs, as well. And I don't think Nintendo will bring back stuff like Pokemon Troze or something like that. I don't really expect Nintendo to bring that back as well. Considering that they technically have made sequels to Pokemon Troze for the mobile consoles, Pokemon Cafe Mix, Pokemon, Shuffle as well. But I think definitely Nintendo will bring back Pokemon Ranger. And definitely much more than just a mobile game. Hopefully it's an actual big budget game and not just some city mobile game with a bunch of microtransactions stuff then. Because yes, Nintendo is abandoning mobile games, but not Pokemon and the company and Game Freak. No, they're definitely not abandoning mobile games as well. Considering that Game Freak will do anything to make money off of the phone games as well. Thankfully, the Game Freak has not tampered, or Pokemon Company has not tampered with many of these spin-offs for Pokemon on mobile just yet, outside of the Troze series, as well. But definitely, I think Pokemon Company and Nintendo should bring back some of their spin-off series as well. Make a new Mystery Dungeon game, and make that, actually has a good story. And considering that Nintendo is finally learning the lesson and giving stuff what fans want, maybe one day down the road we'll get a Pokemon Ranger game and another Mystery Dungeon game. But I think if Nintendo really wants to test the water, I think Nintendo should remake the first Pokemon Ranger game. I think Nintendo should start with the first game. Even though I like the second game, it had a better soundtrack, it had better characters, it had little side quests. It had Gen 4 Pokemon, which I love Gen 4. Pokemon Ranger is one of the main. Pokemon Ranger, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon are one of the main reasons why I love the Gen 4 era Pokemon. It was so innovative, it was so creative, okay? You had all these creative Pokemon ideas that just disappeared with the 3DS era. Okay, it seems like the 3DS era, Pokemon has just gotten lazy. Okay, and it has continued to the Switch era as well with the more tone deaf Pokemon games as well, cutting Pokemon basically because they're too lazy to come up with new animations. But don't worry, or if you were, for example, Venusaur, oh, you have to wait until until 5 games later, so you can actually use Venusaur again. But don't worry, Charizard will get new form every game because everybody loves Charizard. It is kind of sad that Pokemon has basically become just cash grab at this point and not something creative anymore. That's why the DS Pokemon games are so great and I have such great nostalgia for them. Even though I don't really play the DS anymore, I still have such great nostalgia for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon Diamond Pearl Platinum, Pokemon Sword Heart Gold, Soul, Pokemon Black White 2, and even games I didn't really care for too much, like Pokemon Conquest. Okay, games that I didn't really care for too much, or games like Pokemon Soze, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, then Blue, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Sky, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Darkness, Time, okay, and of course the free Pokemon Ranger games as well. Okay, I consider all those games better than stuff like Pokemon Stadium, the '90s kids Pokemon games, or Pokemon Snap. Okay, I get some people grew up in the '90s, but I still think the DS era of Pokemon was the golden era of Pokemon. I really do think it is. Some people say, "Oh, but it's Gen 1." No, it is not Gen 1. Okay, it is not the '90s nostalgia grasses Pokemon. The best era of Nintendo, I think, is the DS era of Pokemon. It was Pokemon at its most creative. You had great stories like Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2, which no game has topped the story of those games. No game has ever did. I played Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and no, the games are not better than Pokemon Black and White 2 in terms of story-wise. Pokemon Black and White, okay? Univore had such an interesting war and interesting characters. Okay, get this. Even though people really hated him back in the day, was better than all of the villains preceding him, except for Guzma. And, yeah. Again, he's a classic Pokemon villain, so yeah. And actually, it's Pokemon Sun and Moon had a pretty good story, but not as good as Black and White. Okay, again, it might just be nostalgia for those games, but Pokemon Sun and Moon had a pretty decent story as well, and the Ultra games as well. I actually kind of forgot to mention those games. But the only games that really came close was Pokemon Sun and Moon and Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon. And those are the only games that ever came close to the amazing story of Black and White and Black and White 2. Okay, the amazing characters of those games as well. Okay, and of course, Pokemon soundtracks have always been good. You don't have to really deny that, okay? Like, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, even those games pale in comparison to Black and White. And of course, the second greatest story in Pokemon main series games, obviously being, Sun and Moon as well. I did like the stories of that game as well. But of course, Pokemon spin-offs had great stories as well. I think Nintendo should definitely, and Nintendo is really testing the waters of bringing back good stories to spin-off series like Mario RPGs. I think Nintendo should definitely give Pokemon spin-offs another chance. And that's it about this video. Goodbye.